ISP's flagship journal, Pain, is proud to celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2025. Prior to Pain, there had never been a journal dedicated to the field of pain research and management. Throughout the year, the journal has commemorated this special anniversary and its history of leadership in pain research. In November, this will culminate in a special 50th anniversary supplemental issue dedicated to discussing ideas and aspirations for the future of pain research. To speak about her thoughts behind the supplemental issue, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Karen Davis, Pain's fifth editor-in-chief and a pioneer in using electrophysiological and brain imaging techniques to investigate mechanisms underlying pain. For the past 2.5 years, Karen has faithfully served the journal and upheld its consistent high standard in both quality and innovation in pain research. Last year, she decided that for the 50th anniversary, she'd create a special supplemental issue to look into the future of the field, in addition to a few solicited pain essays, paying tribute to the 4 former editors-in-chief. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So why did you choose this theme of looking forward rather than kind of focusing on the past history of the journal?
That's a great question. And, we thought long and hard about how best to celebrate our 50th anniversary. Mostly when people are celebrating an anniversary, they're always looking back. And that's great. And we absolutely need to celebrate the achievements in the field and kind of reminisce about how things played out over the last 50 years, how the journal started, how the field started. We ended up soliciting articles that would give tribute to the first 4 editors-in-chief of the journal, starting with Patrick Wall, and then Ronald Dubner, and then Alan Basbaum, and finally Frank Keep. And through those tribute articles that were solicited through our new article type that you mentioned, called Pain Essays, we did cover a lot of territory of how the journal started, how the field emerged, and then also the role of those 4 previous editors-in-chief in developing the journal. So that gave us a foundation of not only how the journal developed and the contribution of those individuals, but also how the field developed and some of the innovation and some of the advances in the field. This is great reading, and I encourage you to read those 4 pain essays. But thinking about what we should do to wrap up this year of celebration, we felt that moving into the future is really important, and to give encouragement and hope and ideas for younger generations and the next generations of people working in the field. So that's why we thought it would be a positive way to end the year of celebration by looking forward.
Nice. And what makes those pain essays different than any of the other article types that are currently in the journal?
Right. So the pain essay, this is a new article type. This was really the brainchild of Jane Ballantyne, who has a lot of interest in history and how fields develop, how individuals develop a field, and ideas that can impact our field that come from perhaps other perspectives. So together with Jane, we created this new type of contribution to the journal, and we felt that the tributes to the 4 editors-in-chief would be a good way to launch this new type of article in the journal. And so it gave some perspective, both historical, personal, and scientific, regarding the period of time that those 4 individuals were editors-in-chief, which really spanned from the foundation of the journal to up until when I became editor-in-chief in 2023.
Nice. And kind of going back to the supplemental issue, do you have any like articles that you're super excited about, super excited to see?
Right. Good question. But of course, you're a parent of many children. You have to be careful not to to choose one over the other. So I would say I'm really excited about all of the papers. We do have one special article which starts off the supplement based on interviews that one of our section editors, Cheryl Stuckey, did with the two recent Nobel Prize winners working in the field of pain, David Julius and Artem Patapoutian. And I'm excited, first of all, that Doctors Julius and Patapoutian agreed to do these interviews. Since winning a Nobel Prize, you can imagine how busy their life has become. They were really enthusiastic about speaking, not just about their scientific discovery, but about everything that goes on behind the scenes in terms of developing ideas, perhaps dealing with things that don't work out, about mentorship in particular is something that they wanted to share their stories with us for that next generation. And in terms of mentoring new and young researchers from their perspective of what their approach has been, what's worked, maybe what hasn't worked, how they felt themselves when they went through their early training years. And so they were very open and encouraging to people. And so I think that turned out to be really a terrific way to open the supplement with those interviews. And then following that, we have, of course, 28 papers which touch on many, many different aspects of pain from different perspectives, and will be of interest to people working in various aspects of pain.
Nice. And I know that sometimes writing about things that aren't scientific, aren't just facts, are kind of daunting to write about. Was it hard to get people to agree to write these articles for you?
No, actually, this is it was such a delight that we started off with quite a long list of topics and people to write on those topics. We wanted to make sure that we covered the span of research endeavors all the way from molecules to cells, to systems, to clinical work, to societal issues, and many other levels. So we had a lot to cover, and we also were very aware that you can get amazing insight when you have perspectives from people coming from different backgrounds, different types of training, different geographies, different specializations, different career stages. And, so with the diversity of ideas that come with having people write things with those different, individual perspectives, we felt, really excited about trying to balance that so that as a whole, the reader can look at pain and its investigation from all these different perspectives. So we had a long list, and then we had a long list of potential authors, and it was very hard to fit that all in. We did have some authors come together to write papers as a team, and that was terrific, and that allowed even within a particular article to get different perspectives. So, we were thrilled. We initially thought that, we would invite people to write on these different topics, like with any sets of invitations that go out, you'll have a certain number of people who will decline for various reasons. We actually ended up with tremendous enthusiasm. So in the end, we really had to expand the size of the supplement to make room for more articles than we initially planned for. But we felt it was really important to include all these articles.
Right. And I'm sure that it'll all be worth it. I'm sure that there's just so many different like opinions and viewpoints. It'll be so interesting to read. And so with all of those different viewpoints coming together, do you agree with a lot of the statements that the authors put forward about their view on the future of pain research?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I tried to stay out of the business of putting my stamp on these articles. All the articles went through peer review, and I also looked through them, as did some of the section editors, depending on the expertise and the topic of the article. So we had many eyes on each article. Most articles did go through some revision, but they really were focused on revisions to clarify issues, to streamline issues, to highlight important points being made either through text or through figures and visuals. And we really tried to stay out of the business of kind of changing people's views or taking something out because maybe we didn't totally agree with it. We just tried to make sure that the papers were as accurate as can be, and we gave authors leeway to write about what they wanted to write about. Since we gave the instructions to the authors that this was meant to be a supplement that focuses on the future. Of course, any mention of information from the past has to be accurate, but we did want to give them freedom to think widely, broadly, even if it was, a dream that might not come true for years or decades. We wanted to give that opportunity to kind of dream big for the next 50 years of research.
Yeah, that's great, because I think all of those different viewpoints and everything kind of is what pushes science forward. Like all of those different perspectives and even sometimes the debating that comes out of them. I know the debates at the ISP World Congress are some of the most well-attended events. So for this issue, you chose to focus on including impactful figures. Can you talk more about that? Why was that such a focus for you?
Right. So that was really important for me. And, had we been able to make the supplement even longer, we would have been able to fit in or encourage even more figures than we did. I think that most of us are visual people. Most of us are also extremely busy, overloaded, and inundated with so much to read that it's really hard to keep up with the literature. So, we think about, well, what will grab somebody's attention? What's salient? And what will get the message across? I felt that in general, articles in the journal, and especially for this supplement, really can be enhanced by communicating concepts through nice graphics and visuals. And that's, for many people, that's what will stick in their mind. It also provides them something that they can use for their own teaching and to give talks and to really guide thinking about future research and future developments. Of course, many people are more textual, so it is, of course, important to have the writing be salient as well. But the visuals really do, convey something that sometimes gets lost in the weeds, of the text. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Since we were actually quite restricted in the word count, in the length of each article for the supplement, you couldn't squeeze everything that, an author wants to say into the text. So the graphics and the figures also provides a way to convey more information than we have room for in the text. And also, I would say that I think that authors themselves, I know myself as an author, find it really kind of fun and exciting, even though it's hard, to develop these other ways of communicating their ideas through visuals. And given the tools that we have at our disposal today to make nice graphics, this becomes an easier task than perhaps it was in the past, but also kind of a fun way of working on ideas.
Right, exactly. With some of the free tools out there, it's making it a lot easier to make those pretty figures and have them be actually really informational. So, speaking of visuals, Kathleen Sluka is painting the cover of the supplemental issue, which is so exciting and so fun. What was it like designing a cover with her that's this paint instead of like a digital medium?
Right. Well, it in a word, fabulous. So Kathleen Sluka, for people who don't know her, had been a section editor at Payne for many, many years. She's a basic scientist, but also has clinical insight because she also trained in physiotherapy. So she has both cell molecular insights as well as clinical experience. So she was the perfect person to be able to try to encapsulate everything that was in the supplement investigations at various different levels. She also, some people don't know, is an artist, and she works with different media. She paints, she does digital work, she does all sorts of different types of artwork, and much of her artwork is focused on issues of neuroscience and in the pain field as well. You know, these things naturally come together to make her the perfect person to contribute the cover to Payne. In the past, she has actually created several covers for different issues of Payne throughout the years. So we knew that she does high quality work. She's very, very thoughtful, insightful, and having somebody who also works as an artist come up with a cover really was an opportunity to bring some humanity to the cover, not just science. So we talked about several ideas. We wanted to make sure that it was forward thinking, and also that it was something that would convey not just the reality of pain and the suffering of people with pain and the research that goes on, but also a degree of optimism of what can happen with continued investigation into pain in the future to alleviate that suffering in people. So she was the perfect person to do that, and it was a pleasure to see her develop her ideas for the cover.
All right. So, Karen, if you were solicited to write one of these articles, what do you think the next 50 years of pain research will look like?
Wow, that's $1 million question. After thinking about all the people and topics that we wanted to include in the supplement, and then seeing the papers as they came in, it was very clear that my own excitement comes from the fact that we are gaining tremendous insight and information that might be used for clinical application because we are now able to combine information across many, many disciplines at different levels of investigation, and including the patient experience, which also includes the transition over the last decades from a time when we just looked at pain or assessed pain on a scale of 1 to 10, looking at intensity, or maybe adding in another rating of unpleasantness or something like that, to the point now where we do think about and assess pain truly as a multi-dimensional experience, as was put forth 50 years ago, but really wasn't studied experimentally much in the early days of pain research. So what excites me is that, we are taking a much wider lens on what pain is, how it's experienced, what it means to people, how it impacts their world, how their situation in which they live and through all their identities may impact how they experience pain. They get treatment for pain. They're able to manage pain. And putting that together with the tremendous technological advances that we have now to investigate all the points of failure within the nervous system that might contribute to these pain conditions, as well as pose potential points for modulation, either a singular point or a multifaceted approach to find what can be fixed, what can be modulated, what can be boosted, and point us in the right direction on an individual basis towards, what people talk about now as being a personalized approach to pain management. And that does require insight from all these levels of investigation, including at the individual level. So the fact that these sorts of concepts are more and more widely accepted as just, the way to go about our business of doing pain research is really encouraging for me. The other thing I should note is that when I started in the field in my first IASP conference, World Congress, was in 1984 in Seattle. So I am dating myself. I would say that back then, we were very siloed. I was a basic scientist. I was in electrophysiology at that point. And, the people working in clinical investigation and the people working in the basic sciences didn't necessarily speak to each other that much. If you walked into a plenary session or a workshop or poster session at a conference, you didn't see that much mixing of people wanting to learn from other levels of investigation than their own. But now that's kind of melted away, and it's very encouraging to see people wanting to understand kind of what's going on the other side, forming collaborations, forming very large-scale projects to look at problems from a multidisciplinary approach. Certainly, some of that was going on back then, but that's kind of become much more desirable now, and frankly, much more fundable to be doing collaborative work. So I'm encouraged by that, and I'm encouraged that the silos are breaking down.
Yes, for sure. I'm definitely noticing an increase in translational research and a lot of articles that combine both basic data and clinical data. So that's so cool and very fun to see. So that's all I have for you today, Karen.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. And I'm very much looking forward to the supplement coming out in November.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to talk about the supplement. It's really been such a pleasure. I also want to thank ISP and yourself and Peter Delabo in all your help, and the section editors who did a lot of reviewing. A lot of work went on behind the scenes, and of course, I want to thank all the authors who contributed their time and thought and put their ideas out there. This supplement is going to be freely available, and that means that people will be able to read it around the world. I also encourage people to flip through the articles, whether they address a topic that you're very familiar with or something that is new to you, and to learn from areas of research and perspectives that you weren't previously aware of, or maybe is not even within your discipline of training and where you work. I particularly encourage people at the training stage and early career stage to have a look through the entire supplement to get a broad perspective on ideas and optimism that is coming from various areas, and to get ideas that can help motivate developing your own ideas and your own plan for investigation in the future. And certainly, this is an opportunity to be aware of some people in the field that you may not know about. And I encourage you to reach out to those people if you do want to develop some collaborations or further discussions. I think this is a great opportunity to encourage further networking.
That's amazing. And yeah, the issue being freely available for everyone, even if you're not a subscriber to Pain, is going to be really monumental in getting that sort of collaboration and distributing that knowledge between all these different fields. But yeah, thank you so much for coming today, Karen. And I'm really looking forward to reading the supplement.
Thank you so much.
And here, to read an excerpt from her special introduction to the supplemental issue, is Karen Davis.
Throughout 2025, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Pain, the Journal of the International Association for the Study of Pain. A series of writings reflected on our history and paid tribute to Patrick Wall, the first editor-in-chief of Pain, and the three other previous editors-in-chief, Ronald Dubner, Alan Basbaum, and Frank Keith. As 2025 comes to a close, it is my great pleasure to bring you this special supplement issue of Pain that synthesizes and highlights exciting advancements of the past while keeping an eye to the future. We hope the articles collected herein will serve to encourage and stimulate thought, to advance research towards greater understanding of pain and improved pain management. It is an exciting time for the pain field as new technologies and bold, innovative thinking hold great promise to advance the study and management of pain towards improved outcomes and equity. This excitement has been captured beautifully in our cover image by Dr. Kathleen Sluka, who depicts the stairway climbed by people living with pain who experience a myriad of hardships and suffering. The image of a journey towards hope and relief is a theme that encapsulates the writings in this special supplement, which present ideas and goals for the next 50 years of pain science, technology, healthcare, and community support towards a brighter future for those in pain. The supplement opens with interviews of Drs. David Julius and Artem Patapoutian, the 2021 Nobel Prize laureates in physiology or medicine, for their work on receptors for temperature and touch that has led to significant advancements in our understanding of nociception and pain conditions. Their reflections humanize the pursuit of science, providing insight into their journeys and inspiration for future science, work-life balance, and mentorship of the next generation. The subsequent 28 papers summarize past work and look to the future of the pain field across a wide range of topics, from experimental work to translational, clinical, and community studies. The contributing authors are researchers and clinicians from many backgrounds, geographies, and career stages, whose diversity of perspectives provide insight, ideas, and inspiration. While no survey of such a broad range of disciplines and approaches can be truly exhaustive, I encourage you to read and consider the many themes that emerged, including the use of multidisciplinary approaches and collaboration, biomarker development, artificial intelligence, new and personalized models, and ethical and equitable frameworks. A universal theme across all these articles is a passionate optimism for a future in which pain relief is effective and accessible to all.